Hello, welcome to Chapter 3 Podcast, the show for readers of science fiction, fantasy, and romance. This is Season 2, Episode 28. And today, me and Leanna are here to talk about the controversial show, Rings of Power. And we've got two rather different perspectives on the show for you, so it should be fun. But first, before we dive into it, I do want to make a special announcement. We are going to be trying something a little experimental and see how it goes for our live show. We're doing a live show for the podcast episode for Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie. It's going to be November 29th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So after that episode airs, people who are downloading the podcast to listen to will then get access to it. Probably the next day I'll be able to upload it. But if you want to join us over on YouTube, we will be doing an actual live show where you can interact with us and comment, and we're going to see how it goes. If things go well, you could perhaps expect to see some similar things in the coming year. And in case you missed the announcement previously, in 2023, we're going to be doing a Witcher read-along. So if you want to join us, it's going to be fun. Yay.
I'm excited.
I am too. I think it'll be good. Hopefully it'll be fun. And we'll try to be good about, for audio listeners later on, actually reading the comments out loud and not just reading them in our heads, because I feel like that is one problem with live shows. So we'll try to figure out how to make that work. But we're going to talk Rings of Power. And I think this should be interesting because I actually liked the show. I don't think it's perfect. I do think,
and we're still friends. It's an option.
It is. We can disagree on stuff. Yeah. Actually, it's kind of funny. I ended up going live the other night with Jessie from The Bookish Mom, and we're reacting to Barnes & Noble Best Books of the Year. And I feel like part of the live show ended up turning into reacting to things Leanna does and doesn't like. Because I was like, listen, like, you can dislike different things and you can still be friends. And if you have strong feelings about a thing that they make a video about, just don't watch it. It's okay.
What particularly did I piss you guys off about that you were like, we forgive her?
I don't even remember what the exact thing was. I think somebody mentioned in the comments something about your thoughts on it, and I was like, yeah, like, it's fine. We're still friends. I don't even remember what it was.
There's so many to choose from.
There's so many to choose from. It's true. But I thought that was entertaining. People are like, she doesn't like anything. I was like, that's not true.
I like First Law.
She does. Well,
in fact, just today I ordered a new set of First Law.
Did you really?
I think when everything that I have ordered or projected to own, because some are collections that they have not they are going to release like the rest of it, but it's not released yet. Yeah. So like for all the books that I'm going to have, once I complete those sets, I will be able to fill an entire bookcase with just First Law books. Wow. I look forward to that day.
Wow, that is really impressive.
Thank you.
Yes. But yeah, so we're going to talk Rings of Power. Leanna, you have unexpectedly gained some YouTube notoriety with your videos making fun of Rings of Power.
Yeah, which was an accident. I had not planned to cover the show at all, other than to maybe since I had planned to cover House of the Dragon, and I was like, I might mention Rings of Power as a counterpoint, but I had planned to cover House of the Dragon. We did a read along for those books this year. This was the thing I would do. Rings of Power, I was gonna watch it because it's happening. I'm curious. I had no plans to cover the show whatsoever. And then episode 3, I was texting so many people while I was watching it, just cracking jokes about it, and mostly just repeating what was happening in the episode. I didn't even have to make a joke. I was like, this happened, that's ridiculous. This happened, that's ridiculous. And I looked at my messages that I had sent to everybody for that episode, and I was like, I could just basically transfer these messages into a list on a Word doc, and that's a script for a video right there, with no effort. And I was like, whatever. Yeah, I mean, maybe no one will watch it. Who cares? I was like, but yeah, I'll just read aloud, basically. All these
Lo
jokes.
And behold, a lot of people watched it.
And I was like, I guess I'm doing this now. But then I was really panicky because I was like, well, episode 3 was particularly hilariously dumb. So I was like, I was basically just like, this is stupid, and then read aloud what happened. And so then when people were like, oh, you have to do this for the next episode. And I was like, I can't guarantee the next episode will be equally ridiculous. I was like, what? That's so much pressure. So then I was like, I have to like, I don't know, find a way to make it funny. I don't know. God, I hope it's bad. Because like, if I have to keep doing this. Because I was like, the comedy just writes itself, you know, like on a particularly dumb scene, you know, you don't, it's kind of like when, I forget who I said this to, but it was kind of like when people kept saying that comedians are glad that Trump is president because they don't have to write comedy. They can just read the news aloud and it's just funny.
I mean, yeah.
So like that was like me with Rings of Power. I was like, I'm not making jokes. I'm just telling you what happened in the episode and laughing about it. So yeah. It happened.
It happened. And then those took off. And yeah, I have not talked about it yet. I am going to. I've recorded one video. I'm not doing every episode, but I did record one video because I'm like, am I like the lone voice out here saying I'm not the only person?
So I'm assuming this one video is like an overview of like the whole season.
Yeah, it's not super specific. It's more talking about, generally speaking, my thoughts on it, criticisms I have, things I liked about it, where I disagree with some of the critiques of the show. So it's not hyper specific. But yeah, so I do have that coming out on a new channel that I made because YouTube doesn't apparently like it when I talk about things that are not books. So I was like, well, I'm just going to make another channel to talk about TV and films and stuff. So
turning into a mogul.
I know. I've got an empire of YouTube channels. So I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was perfect, and I think there are things they could have done better, but overall, I had a pretty good time with the show. And I think it's interesting because, you know, I'm coming at it as somebody who is admittedly not an expert in Tolkien.
I was going to say maybe we should talk about like how much, if at all, we're like, you know, aware of, familiar with Tolkien.
Right. Which I think is an important thing to talk about because the people watching the show come from a variety of backgrounds. And I think, I mean, I get it, like, understandably. I think where I've seen a lot of criticism is from people who are deeply familiar with all of the Tolkien things. I am, I guess, a moderate Lord of the Rings fan, I would say. I've read The Hobbit. I've read the trilogy. I like them a lot. I grew up as a teenager watching the Peter Jackson movies, and I loved those. But I have not read all the extended content, the Silmarillion. I'm not by any means an expert in it. So I'm kind of coming at it as somebody who has, you know, loved the world for a long time and is somewhat familiar with the properties, but hasn't. I don't know all the things. Like, there are people who know a lot more about everything than I do.
I'm pretty similar. I read the trilogy. I started reading the Silmarillion before Rings of Power came out, like right directly before. So I was thinking, oh, it'd be cool to read the Silmarillion before this comes out, but I hadn't finished it before the show started airing, and I started watching the show, and I was like, you know what? I think reading the Silmarillion will upset me. I should just put a pin in that and read the Silmarillion after the show is done airing, because I will be more upset than I already am if I actually read the Silmarillion.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, right, Amazon doesn't have the rights to the Silmarillion anyway. So in terms of if they're making stuff up, that's, you know, they weren't given the rights to that. The other thing, and this I think is interesting because I do follow, like, if anybody is looking for an expert in Tolkien to follow who mostly largely like the show with some criticisms, Don Marshall 72 on TikTok I really enjoy. And so I've learned some deeper lore from him, which has been kind of interesting. But I guess one thing too is that the Silmarillion and some of the extended stuff wasn't published in Tolkien's lifetime. It was put together by his kids after his death. And apparently he was also pretty well known for changing his mind about things quite frequently. So, like, who knows whether all of it was even canon, so to speak.
Yeah, but we do have a pretty, like, established, you know, published by the estate of Tolkien, at least by his son, you know, based on the notes he had written. Like, there's nothing to suggest that he had intended to change his mind about anything.
Yeah, not necessarily, but I think I don't remember exact because again, not an expert, but I do remember hearing he had, like, multiple different endings at different points for characters and different ideas of where different things came from, so but that all of that aside, honestly, for me, doesn't even really matter because I think I don't need an adaptation to necessarily be entirely faithful to the source material.
No. And I mean, the Peter Jackson movies are not
No,
entirely faithful to the source material.
no. And I think for some people that's a problem. I think some people feel like Tolkien is sort of a sacred text to a certain extent where, like they don't want anything different. And that's not how I feel. I feel like for me an adaptation is successful if I mean honestly like if I have more enough enjoyment of watching it that I want to be doing that instead of doing the myriad of other things I could be doing. Like,
I mean, on the surface of
you
it,
know.
like that position on adaptations as a whole is also my position. We just disagree about whether or not it was successful just because like I've said before,
Yeah.
that like coming into Rings of Power
Mhm.
that like okay, like I shouldn't say I don't care because I would care a bit, but
Mhm.
like I don't ultimately care if it's faithful to like the letter of, what Tolkien said happened or
Right.
Tolkien said is how this works or whatever. Like honestly, like if it was like completely balls to the wall, has like breaks every possible bit of lore, does not tie into Lord of the Rings whatsoever, but was by itself like a compelling piece of television that I was like, look, if I turn off the part of my brain that's aware that Tolkien is a real thing and just watch this, like
Mhm.
it's a heck of a ton of fun. But I
Yeah.
don't feel that it is. So
Mhm.
like I don't think it's good on either level. I'm like, it's not if it was like a because you could have a really, really faithful adaptation that's
Mhm.
boring as all get out because it's just like this is how it happened. It doesn't matter if on screen we should change it to make it better pacing for TV. It doesn't matter. This is what
Yes.
happened. Like that could be boring too. And then you'd be like,
Yeah.
well, it's accurate. So
Right.
like I don't think it was accurate or good. Like I just think it was on every metric bad.
Yeah. Whereas I think for me, it was, definitely not perfect. I think it for sure has some pacing issues and a couple of weird choices, but overall, I mostly enjoyed it. I liked a lot of the characters. I enjoyed being back in Middle Earth because and, like, having grown up watching the Peter Jackson films in my very formative years, I think that was just really fun for me, and I think a lot of the things about the show that irritated people just did not bother me.
I think I hadn't thought of it in these terms yet,
Mhm,
but when you just said, it was nice to be back in the world and it's nostalgic, blah blah blah. Like
mhm,
I don't feel that way because I don't feel like I'm back in the world,
mm,
So it feels I makes mainly missing the Peter Jackson movies when I watch it, and I realize that it's almost exactly the same feeling that I have if I watch the like soulless Disney live action remakes of their classic movies, where I'm like, it's supposed to give me nostalgia for the Beauty and the Beast, but mostly I'm going, this is awful, but I really wish I was watching Beauty and the Beast, which I love. This is not it. So
I
like
mean,
that was
to
my
you
experience
know
with
what? Like, and to be controversial, and nobody's gonna trust my but you know what? It's
oh,
fine.
you liked
I
the
mean,
live
I
action
liked the
remake?
Beauty and the Beast adaptation. I
No.
did, I enjoyed it. I
No.
so so, I mean, I think that's the thing is, like, I just like, I think there are things that really bother some people that don't bother me in films and adaptations. I think my biggest issue with this was some of the pacing. I did think it was too slow, and I think they dragged out the reveal of who Sauron was, which we'll maybe wait to talk specifically about that till we get to a spoiler section, but, I think they dragged that out too long. I don't think that that mystery should have been the entire 1st
Well,
season.
I think one or the other. So it's like it's in the awful middle, and I want if you want to keep it's spoiler free, I'll keep this spoiler free. But
We can
like
do a spoiler section, but, like, let's
right, but I'm saying like
yeah,
to
yeah,
make my
yeah.
point, I can keep it
Right, yeah,
spoiler
yeah,
free.
yeah.
That I think
Okay.
that it was the worst of both worlds. Like either you're right, they shouldn't have stretched that out so long,
Mhm.
or they should have stretched it far more. Where like well beyond this first season, we are slowly gonna come to this realization, as
Mhm.
opposed to like because like it was slow, 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 and then just like
And then all
bam,
of the sudden
like
yeah.
I'm sorry that we did not build up to this reveal.
No. No, no.
What?
Yeah, I mean, and I think there was so much going on and so many different characters, like, so I liked the characters. I know you did not, but I did. Like, I liked most of the characters. I just think there were too many things happening in different places, and they really dragged out like, we were in, um my brain now is like
I
deciding
can
not
help
to.
you if you give me
Thank you. The
hints.
city, the island.
Numenor?
Numenor, thank you. Oh my god, like, which I filmed a video about this recently in
Atlantis.
Atlantis, Numenor. But, like, we were in Numenor for a long time and nothing was really happening. So, I mean, I like a slow burn, but this,
We
even
were
for
with the
me,
Harfoots for a long time and nothing ever happened
I
with
mean,
that
that's
plot
true.
line.
I didn't mind that. You're not wrong about that. I just find the Harfoots charming, so I don't really care. I know some, like, there's so much hate for the Harfoots, but I like them. I think they're cute, so it's, it's
Well,
fine.
if you respect them for living by the pirates code, he who falls behind gets left behind. Like, how charming.
They're survivors. They gotta survive,
Someone had a broken ankle and they have wagons and they
Yeah,
can't pull that fella along. That's
it was harsh.
adorable.
It was harsh, but I really liked, like, Nori. I thought the Harfoots were cute, but it is true that we did have, again, we had a lot of repetition of, like, plot points with them and in other places. So I think that is probably my biggest issue, is just the pacing. Like, again, I'm cool with a slow burn to a certain point, but this season really drags stuff out and really
Well,
drags the
also
mystery out.
to spend so much time dragging out things that only later pay off, or that literally never pay off because there's no
Right.
point to it, like the Harfoots. Like,
Yeah.
to spend all that time with that. Then there's other stuff that, like, they just in the last episode were like, whoops, we forgot to do this at all, so let's do it now. And you're like, instead of wasting hours on that other
Yeah.
stuff, you could have been building up to this,
Yeah.
maybe, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, like, that I think is, like, a totally fair criticism, and I would like to see them do a better job with story pacing in season 2. Um, it but I guess I just feel like, for me, that's really my main critique of the show, other than the weird scene with Galadriel slow-mo on a horse grinning. I was like, "What is this scene?" Like, that
I
was
mean, we had her riding
weird.
slow-mo several times. That was the
We
worst
did.
one, but,
That was
like,
the
she was
worst.
also riding slow
It's true.
yet again. Like, it's the only way she knows how to ride.
It's true. I don't know what that was. That was, like, a weird shot where I was like, "What is happening?"
I don't understand who
I don't
watched
know.
the final cut of that episode and was like, "Yep, keep all
Like,
that
yep,
in.
keep it in. The grinning face.
That'll be charming to the audience."
Yeah, that was an odd choice. So, like, there are critiques to be made. I think things could have been better, but that aside, otherwise, like, I mostly was enjoying it, and I am excited to see what they're gonna do in season 2. I like a lot of the characters. I think probably one of the biggest highlights of the show for me is all the stuff with the dwarves and Elrond. Like,
I will concede that that part sucked less than the rest
it
of
sucked
it.
less.
I also think that was helped by the fact that, like, a lot of it looked so CGI all the time, and the
Mhm,
parts with the dwarves, like, it's easier to just have a rock wall look kind of grounded and real. Like,
mhm.
most of the other shots looked so, like, that
Hmm.
fake green screeny, like, this doesn't look grounded feel.
That's
Whereas, like, in the
interesting.
caves, you're like, yeah, they're in caves.
Okay, well, so see, that's interesting because that's not how they filmed it. Like, they, like, built sets for most of it and filmed it in New Zealand.
I know, which is why I'm shocked that it looks so fake all the time.
That's so weird. I guess I didn't feel that way. I thought it was beautiful, honestly.
I thought it was beautiful in the way that a video game is beautiful, where, like, when you watch a video game, you're
Hmm.
like, this is very pretty, but this looks really, really, really fake. So, like, yeah, like, it's
That's
pretty, but, like,
Yeah,
not, you don't feel grounded.
that's so interesting.
Like, it looked like the Hobbit movies. The Hobbit movies were also filmed in New Zealand, but they
Yeah,
looked much more fake than the Lord of the Rings movies because they put over it a ton of CGI.
yeah. Huh. It's so interesting.
I mean,
Well,
would
and
you agree that the Hobbit movies look a lot more fake than the Lord of the Rings movies?
uh maybe. I don't know that that's something that really stood out to me. I mean, I think the Hobbit movies are bad for other reasons.
But just, like, as an example, they also filmed it in New
Um,
Zealand, but, like,
yeah.
they clearly did a lot
Yeah.
in post that made it look really fake.
Yeah, maybe. That's so interesting. In general, I liked the look of the show, and I thought it was really lovely, and I was enjoying that part of it. I Yeah, I don't so I just think it's interesting. Okay, one other thing too, and we've talked about this before, but I've been thinking about it since the finale aired because we had kinda talked previously, like, midway through the season off.
I was
Screen.
kind of curious if you still felt as positively towards it now that because we talked,
Uh-huh.
yeah, as you say,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
mid-season, and now
Yeah.
like at the end, you're like, because like Hillary, our friend,
Mhm.
like she was trying to like it, and then
Yeah.
about at the midway point was like, it's not good. So I was like,
Yes.
maybe Bethany had a change of heart midway too.
No, well, so I think midway, there were a couple of episodes where I was like, "Okay, this really needs to pick up." And then for me, it did. Like, the last couple episodes I liked. So yeah, overall, mostly positive. Like, I
I mean,
think,
tell
you know,
me how you feel about them walking away from a volcanic eruption, just no problem. How do you feel about that?
whatever, it's fine. I'm not.
Pompeii is like, what did we do wrong?
I don't know. I like. I think. I guess that's just, like, not maybe the kind of detail I think about in the moment. Like, that
Well,
wasn't
but I mean,
what I
it's
was
that kind of
thinking
a
of.
detail that's like, if you can walk away from that,
Yeah.
how am I ever going to feel like you're in danger in any situation when a volcanic eruption didn't take you down? Like,
Mhm.
so what are the rules? What are the stakes? What are the
Right.
power levels here?
Right.
When like the peasant boy can just like shake it off from a volcanic eruption, I'm just like, I feel no danger then in any
Yeah.
circumstance.
No, I mean, which I think is that's a fair criticism. I don't think there is a strong sense of high stakes in the show. I don't know that that really bothered me, but I can see why it would, if that makes sense. Like, would I maybe have been more invested in it if the stakes were higher? Yes, probably. But did it actively take away from me liking it? No, I
Well,
don't
so
think so.
I obviously thought basically everything about the show sucked, but like it's little things like this that
Yeah,
I feel like if the show did one or two things like this, I would definitely call it out because that's who
sure.
I am.
Yeah.
But if it was just the one or two, I'd be like, because the House of the Dragon, which
Mhm.
obviously we're all comparing for those of us who are watching both because they're airing at the same time, but you
Mhm.
can't not do it. That too, like people will they're hyper overreact to like some bad choices that I would generally agree like not a great choice,
Yeah.
because it is like a scene that's for spectacle, that's
Right.
done for like a cool visual, or done for a shock moment of character death type of situation. You're like, well, that was kind of dumb that happened. But when they're like, oh, this show is garbage now, I'm like, no, like one bad scene does not negate an entire excellent season of television.
Mhm.
So if that was the case, like if we in a vacuum, just you and I talked about each of these individual things that I have a problem with, that I guess most people in my camp have a problem with, like any one of them in a vacuum by itself is not that
Mhm.
big a deal. You're right. But it's like the accumulation when you're like, okay, but it's not just the one thing though. It's like this and this and this and this and this and this and this
Mhm.
and this
Mhm.
and this. And you're like, I can forgive 1, 2, 3. But when it's like the entirety of every episode, I'm having to forgive 90% of what's happening. I'm like, uh,
Yeah, I mean, I guess the difference for me is that while watching it, most of the stuff you bring up, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I guess you're right, that is in there." But while I was watching it, I didn't notice it, it didn't bother me, like, it did not negatively impact my viewing experience in the moment, and I think that's the thing, is, like, I just am less bothered by a lot of those things, which I think is often true even when we disagree on books that you
I am a
hated.
picker of nits.
You are. I
That
mean,
is
which is
acknowledged.
I mean, you are. I mean, but which is fine. There's nothing, like that's totally fine. But I think frequently that's what happens when there's a book I love and you hate it and you're like, well, this and this and this. And I'm like, I mean, you're not wrong. I just don't care. I mean, I feel like that's kind of how I feel with Rings of Power. Like there are things I care about. There are things that I am bothered by and I'm like, yeah, this could have been better. I hope they improve it in season 2. But taken on a whole, I feel more positively than negatively about it, and I think a lot of those things I just it didn't bother me that much.
Well, I think it also extremely bothers me because if this isn't just some random mid-budget fantasy nonsense, this
Mhm.
is $1 billion and it's
Yeah.
Tolkien. And you're like, that these were pretty high bars, like you're expected to do better when you're handed $1 billion in Tolkien's name. Like that's
I don't know. I think the problem is I feel like people get really precious about Tolkien and other, kind of like big name classics, and that is just not.
But I mean, like, then I'm like, why are we adapting Tolkien at all? Like, okay, you have $1 billion, so adapt
Mhm.
something else. Like, if you have no real interest in actually adapting Tolkien, then that's fine. You don't have to adapt Tolkien. Just
Because all
adapt a
the
different
people
story.
like me like it. I mean, because partly because, like, people come to it because they're loosely familiar with Lord of the Rings. It was a project that they wanted to do, and I'm not mad about it. Like, I'm like, "Great, good, please give me things that are kinda Tolkien-esque, and I don't need it to be perfect." I don't know. Like, I also don't think I went into the show with a specific idea in my head of what it needed to be at all, and so I've just kind of enjoyed the
I mean,
ride.
I'm certain there are people that had a specific idea and or require it to be 1000% perfectly exactly what Tolkien
Right.
said. And I'm not that person. So like
No,
I
I
went
and
into
I
it
know
thinking
that.
like,
Yeah.
okay, impress me. Like you have $1 billion, like you've decided we can do Tolkien. We're gonna do this. So like, okay, fine. It won't be Peter Jackson's films. It'll be your own thing.
Mhm.
Show me what you got. And in the first episode, I was like, already I have like 50 billion problems with what you're doing, but okay. You know, that doesn't mean you can't fix it. You can't First episodes can be rough. Many of my favorite shows have bad first episodes.
See, I really
So,
liked the
okay.
first episode. I thought the first episode was great.
Well, my point is like I didn't go into it being like, is this gonna suck? And I'm
Mhm.
gonna look for reasons to hate it.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I thought Wheel of Time was awful, so like I'm nervous.
Right.
But also I hoped that I was like, when Wheel of Time was as bad as it was, I was like, hopefully this means that all of their creative efforts were on Rings of Power, and that's why Wheel of Time took the hit, because they were just didn't care about it, because they were like, whatever, Wheel of Time, get it out. We're doing
Mhm.
Rings of Power. So I was like, that could be a good sign, weirdly, for Rings of Power. Like that Wheel of Time was so bad, weirdly. So I was like, it could be great. It could be. And the trailers also did not impress me. But again, there's been many a thing where I've like seen the trailers and thought the trailer looks amazing, and then watch it and be like, that was awful. And there's been many
Mhm.
a thing where I would never watch it because the trailer looked terrible, and someone's like, no, watch it. And I do. And I'm like, actually, that was amazing. Why was the trailer so bad?
Mhm.
So again, I went into it being like, I don't know, but I'm hoping it's good. I would like to like it. And
Mhm.
then it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it got to the point where like the last episode, I was like, I'm expecting it to be bad because it's all been bad. And
Mhm.
I still was not ready for how bad the last episode was.
It's so funny. I mean, because I don't agree. Like, like, I really liked the first episode. As I said, like, there were definitely some episodes in the middle that I was like, "Oh my god, they're dragging this out forever." But I really liked the way that it ended. I think they took too long with the reveal of who people were, but I found it to be a satisfying conclusion. I liked where it was going. I like the choices they're making with some of the character arcs, which we can talk about if we wanna get into some spoilery
I was
things.
gonna say, like, if we want to
Yeah,
talk
let's
spoilers.
let's do that.
I think people who are watching this have seen Rings of Power or don't plan to watch
Probably, or
it.
yeah.
So like I again, just like with broad strokes where like I agree in concept,
Yeah.
adaptations don't need to be 100% accurate. They can be in fact wildly inaccurate as long as they're telling a good story and are
Mhm.
making choices that make for good TV or good cinema or whatever. And so like on paper, the extremely loosely the concept of what they were attempting to do with Halbrand slash Sauron,
Mhm.
that could have the potential to be an interesting thing.
Mhm.
But for this to be the kind of thing they're doing, I should be able at the end of this last episode and the end of the season to be like, I can't wait to go back and watch all the scenes with Halbrand and see how he was actually manipulating people in a way that I didn't pick up on at first. But now that you pointed out to me, I can't wait to go back and see it and to catch it. But that didn't happen. He didn't manipulate anybody. He wasn't being tricksy the whole time.
I
If you
don't
look
think
back
that's
at what he
true.
did,
No, I think he was.
tell me when and how.
No, I'm serious because I this is the thing, is, like, I think he is a character who tries to give people what they want and manipulates people by giving them what they want and using that to get what he wants. And I think you can trace a through line of that, and I think you can see him doing that throughout the show.
Like
And that was
where?
really like through the whole thing, I mean, the everything that happened from the moment that he rescued Galadriel, even though everybody else on that thing died, because he wanted her to feel indebted to him. And then, like, I just feel like there has been, to me at least, like, I feel like there has been that of him kind of nudging things along in different ways of like who he's interacting with and the choices that he's making, which I think is interesting. Even if you don't see it, I still think it's interesting having him be Sauron, because even if, like, because I think there is an argument to be made that perhaps he felt conflicted about some of the things that he had done in the past and wasn't sure, like, all the time whether it was the right thing, which I also think is interesting. But I think in the Peter Jackson movies, Sauron was this sort of vague, dark, evil
Well, in
figure
the
that
Lord
did.
of the Rings, like the
Yeah,
books, that's
right, and in the
Sauron
books
is.
too, like, where there's not a lot of motivation, there's not a lot of personality, and I think even though, yeah, they made a lot of it up, I think what they did in the show makes for such a more interesting villain, at least to me, because there are moments where you're saying, "Okay, but, like, you have a point." Like, or, like, or you
Which is
like
why I
him.
said in broad strokes concept,
Yeah.
like that as a concept has the
Mhm.
potential to make for great television.
Yeah.
But like at all times, so like when they're in Numenor, Galadriel's the one that's like, we need to go to Middle Earth and you need to be the king. And he's like, 0% no. I mean, like, I am gonna go be a blacksmith. Do not involve me in this.
Uh-huh.
And he's not, at no point is there a double meaning. At no point is he like nudging something else happening. He's just saying, no, I don't want this, so that later you're surprised he did want it. So reverse psychology was his manipulation. Like,
Well, or he was I mean, maybe at that point could have been conflicted about what he wanted to do or if he wanted to keep going with it, but I think also, you know, if he knows as much as he supposedly does know about Galadriel and how single-minded she is, like, tell her no. Just tell her no, you can't do
okay,
what
well,
you
I
wanna
said in
do.
my video as a joke that that was his plan. That like
I
tell
mean,
Galadriel no, and she can't stand anyone disagreeing with
I
her,
mean,
so she
honestly,
will.
okay, but honestly, I mean, that is kind of her, and I feel like, to me
She's
too,
extremely
that makes.
unpleasant. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I think it's fine. I think personally, like, I like female characters like that who go on interesting, like, I like the character arc she's on. And I think that she is on a journey of learning why that's a problem. I mean, in the most extreme way possible. But honestly, that was what I took away from it,
Okay,
was
okay.
that
But tell me
maybe.
I'm wrong that this is what happens in the last episode, right?
Okay.
So Galadriel decides to finally do a background check after running with her wild connecting of dots and just being 100%
Yeah.
all eggs in that basket.
Yeah.
So she's like, I should do a background check. So she gets the background check.
Yeah.
And what she learns is simply and only that this royal lineage died out.
Right.
And so she's like, you're not the king. And he's
Mhm.
like, I literally told you I wasn't. I told you I found this on a dead man. And her conclusion, based on only that information, is you are Sauron. Based on the fact that some guy I found floating in the sea who told me he was a nobody, who told me he found this thing on a dead body, it turns out that is true, that he is a nobody and he's not, in fact, the king. She's like, no, this can only mean that you are Sauron.
I think there was more to it than that. I'm trying to, because it's been a little while since I watched it, but I want to say the reason she did the background check in the first place was that she was starting to get suspicious because of other things that had happened. And so I think that she was maybe starting to wonder if that was what was going on, and doing the background check for her was what kind of confirmed what she was suspecting already. That was my take.
But like it's so like her reasoning for suddenly, like she as suddenly decides that he is the king and then equally suddenly decides that he must instead be Sauron. Like these leaps of logic are ridiculous. And then
Well,
the fact that thereafter when he explains himself and she's like, absolutely not. And like literally the conversation between them is
mhm,
like, um, he says, no, I told you I found that on a dead man. And she
mhm,
was like, no, on the boat you saved me.
yeah,
And you wanted to go to Middle Earth. And I'm like, that in no way contradicts what he just said.
mhm,
He said, I found it on a dead man. And
yep,
you said, no, you saved me. That
yep.
has nothing to do with what he just said. And she's like, you convinced them to go to Middle Earth. He's like, no, you did. Like, it's nonsense.
Well, I don't think it's nonsense though, because I think you gotta keep in mind, right, her emotional journey in that moment, and why the fact that he saved her is so crucial, right? Because like she has been on this hundreds of year vendetta against him for killing her brother, and he is like the evil one, the one that she's going to kill cuz he kills everyone. And so I think in that moment, if she's emotionally being like, "No, you saved me," how could it be possible that this person who is evil incarnate in my mind and has been like my one goal to kill you for this long, because that's what I'm starting to suspect, saved my life and I feel indebted. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's the thing, is like what she's saying to me makes a lot of sense given where she would be emotionally in that moment and
It
how she would be
it
responding
would
to
if
it.
that's not what was going on in the conversation, though, because she's trying to confirm if her suspicion is correct. Does he have a reasonable explanation for who he actually
No,
is
because
if he's
she's
not the
scared.
king of
It's
the
because
Southland?
she's scared, Leanna. Not everyone is logical when they're dealing with emotions. She's like, I mean, she's like in a moment where she's feeling these intense things. She is suspecting that this might be the case and she doesn't want it to be true. She's scared that it could be true and is trying to find reasons that it's not.
But she's not, though. He's just giving her reasons why that's not true. He was like, I found it on a dead man. You're the one that wanted to go to Middle Earth. These are reasons that this might not be true. And she goes, you saved me. And is like, he is agreeing with you. Like,
No, 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 because he is saying, no, I don't think that's right. I think the fact that he's not the king is the thing that for her is like, "Oh shit, you're Sauron." And he's like, "Well, yeah, I didn't like he's telling her, "Yes, I'm not who you thought I was."
I'm not the king that you decided that I
Right,
was and
right.
forced me to take up
Right.
being.
I mean, right. Like, but he like led her to believe it. Like he didn't technically lie to her, but like clearly he like knew that was what she was going to assume. But
Which again, then like so like as a character, so then
yeah.
she's like, be the king, you're the king, take up the
Yeah.
mantle, you're the king, you have to be
Yeah.
the king. And then
Yeah.
he's like, hey, okay, I am Sauron, but
Uh-huh.
like let's fix it. Let's make Middle Earth a better place. And she's like, and you want to rule it? And he's like, well, yeah. And she's like, how dare you never? I'm like, you were literally pushing him into ruling a land for the entirety of this show.
Yeah, but she didn't know who he was.
Okay, but like for what we
Now,
so like this show relies on you knowing like the future that oh you've read Lord of the Rings, you know who Sauron is. So
right.
what we're presented with is a dude who's like, look, like okay, like you said I was king and I was like,
Yeah.
all right, if that's what you want,
Yeah.
but like okay, yes, I am Sauron and like I told you I regret what I did and I think we
Mhm.
can fix it and I think we can do better together. And she's like, go die, evil one, and I'm gonna go make a ring of power for myself, but you be gone. But I'm not gonna kill you, even though my entire life goal is to kill you. I'm not gonna kill you, but I'm not gonna send any forces after you, even though I hate you so much that I can never ever consider that you might have a redemption arc. Like she's just
I see
nonsense.
no, but I love it. I love that because the thing is like the whole thing is that she is now so conflicted because yes, she hates him and she wants to kill him, but also like she's come to care for the person that she's gotten to know and she doesn't know how to make those things fit together and she's trying to figure it out. And he is trying to manipulate her because he wants her to rule alongside him as his queen. And so I think that's been maybe his end game from the very beginning, is to like slowly draw her in by
When you
making her
say
feel
from the
pulled.
very beginning, what
I
is the
think
beginning?
like
Because
from
he
the,
was just on a raft. He would have
no,
no
but
idea that Galadriel was going to be in the water and that he would rescue her.
But maybe he did. He's like a shapeshifter. He can do all kinds of things. I think it was intentional. I think it
So,
was
to
intentional.
confirm, my
Yes.
joke video about Sauron's plan,
That's
you believe is his
I
actual plan.
yes, I
It
do.
wasn't happenstance
No.
that he stumbled into actually having this
No,
villain
I think
reveal.
that is genuinely the
So
case.
how did he know that she would, one, be sent to Valinor by the elves, two, decide at the very last minute to be like, I will swim 1,000 miles back to Middle Earth because I would rather do that than go to Valinor. And let me get on a ship that I will then make sure is sabotaged so that we are shipwrecked near where she's going to definitely voluntarily jump into the water and then save her. And
Mhm.
then also make sure this is strategically near enough to Numenor that they in turn save us. That is
Magic.
some 40D
Magic,
chess right
Leanna.
there.
It's magic.
No,
I mean,
no.
I yeah, no, I mean like that like, genuinely though, that's what I think the deal is. actually. Like,
well, that's stupid.
well, I don't agree. I mean, like, we live in a world where they can do all kinds of stuff. Like, why not? They've got like the orbs that they can see other people through. Like, I mean, like, sure, why couldn't Sauron figure out stuff? Anyway, but I think that regardless, even if that's not the case, even if it is like happenstance or fate that they met on the raft in the middle of the ocean or whatever the case may be, or the showrunners needing a way to put them together, I think at the very least from that point, his end game has been to try to sort of seduce her into being his queen and ruling alongside him. That's what I think.
Seduce her by saying, leave me alone. I'm going to go be a smith.
Well, it worked, didn't it?
If you believe that he was trying to accomplish that by being
it's like negging her, Leanna. He was negging her.
So we're saying that the master manipulator Sauron, like the greatest manipulator of all time, who presents a beautiful face to those who encounter him, and he seduces everyone with his beauty and his manipulation. This guy was like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. Make me. That's his master plan. That I'm gonna go back and be so impressed watching this master manipulator. He was doing it all along.
He sees the hearts of what the people want, and he knew it would work with Galadriel. And it was not, I mean, like, honestly, it did. That is the person that she is, and that would be the thing that would work for her. That's my take.
I mean, not only is it dumb, in my opinion, but it's also so deeply uninteresting. Because, like I said, when I said I want to go back to the beginning now, after this shocking reveal that he is Sauron, didn't see that coming.
I didn't see it coming. You were the first person to tell me that people assumed this, and I was like, no way. So I was actually genuinely surprised at the end, and I feel
even though I warned you,
even though you warned me, I was like, no, I don't think that's true.
You're always right. I, like the sea, am always right.
The sea is indeed always right.
Even when it drowns Elendil's wife, that must have been real awkward for him.
That was kind of dumb. The sea is
extremely.
I mean, that fair. No, I don't know. I mean, I like it. I think it's fun.
Explain to me how the Númenóreans knew to go charging towards a random village on the day that a battle would be taking place. Who told them? Who radioed them? They landed on the beaches of Middle-earth and just started charging immediately and happened upon a town.
I mean, like, to be real, that whole thing of like how that happened, it was very rushed and we did not get a lot of information. I just like assume that it's the behind the scenes, they have a reason for it. It's fine. I
can't even conceive of okay, you didn't show it to me, but I could see a chain of events where they would have learned that they just got off of boats. Like, who would have told them that there was a random village that is expecting cavalry?
Didn't they like light a thing, and weren't there people that escaped to like run and like tell what had happened?
Tell to who? The Númenóreans were sailing.
The elves.
And just landed.
The elves. I don't know. I do not know the answer. I just don't care.
And then this charging army somehow had the equipment and the time to build an entire camp upon the hill after the volcanic explosion happened. Already, they have tents set up with tables and fresh clothes and men. I don't know where those supplies were or who escaped the lava to be like, okay, y'all survive the pyroclastic flow. We gonna be up here setting up camp. Okay, see you later. Where did that come from?
I don't know.
Why did Galadriel think that Halbrand, who is at death's door, should get on a horse with his infected wound and ride
that
Eregion?
I mean, honestly, that part, I was like, what?
Why did Halbrand, who was at death's door and was bedridden, when she was like, we're gonna ride there, he was like, all right, let me just walk to my horse.
Well, because it wasn't real. Because I think he was faking it. Because
that would certainly be a dead giveaway, wouldn't it, if he was faking it? Oh, I thought you were at death's door. You just got up and went to your horse. Gotcha.
Oh, but it hurts.
Like, ridiculous.
I just don't mind. I mean, I do think that he was kind of faking it. I just I think this is the thing. It's like what you're saying. Fair.
He suggested to the legendary, the greatest elven smith of all time, Celebrimbor, was like, have you tried mixing metals? And he's like, why have I never heard of this extremely rudimentary metalworking concept? You impress me, young one. Do tell me more about this incredible idea of yours.
I mean, it's rudimentary to us.
choose
know.
to
Yeah, I
metal.
mean,
A smith would know how to combine
right.
metals.
No, I know. Well, I mean, I think it sounded like he had combined some kinds of metals, but it sort of was like, "Oh, wait, but maybe if I did these other metals." I don't
It was ridiculous. This is
eh.
again where like I would love it if the show was like
Mhm,
all these times when Halbrand actually said a thing
mhm.
that when you look back at it is so
Yeah,
clever and actually has so many double meanings that
yeah.
you didn't notice that he what he suggested to Celebrimbor was like actually clever in some way that it
Mhm.
wasn't like okay so also this the dwarves have tons of mithril apparently all you got to do is mix it with some gold or some silver you got some rings of power baby so like why aren't do we not now have like tons of rings of power because they should be very easy to recreate.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Like I would love to be impressed with like,
Mhm.
wow, Sauron really is like he's in a different league, like
Yeah.
outthinking everybody. But if I go back and watch it, like, okay, he's negging her, like that's the master plan. Like, I mean, I guess in fairness, it did work. But
It
like,
worked!
if I'm like, this is the greatest manipulator of like millennia of an
Yeah.
entire world, like I want to be impressed.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess that's really what it comes down to, is it's like, I wasn't going into this necessarily looking to be impressed. Like, as long as I'm having a good time, it's fine. Like, there were things that stood out to me, like the thing on the horse, I was like, "What?" But then, the thing is that for me, that was resolved when it's revealed that he's Sauron, because I was like, "This makes no sense," but then I was like, "Oh,
But it makes
okay."
no sense because Galadriel doesn't know he's Sauron. So for her to be like, oh, we need to heal him. The best that we can do for him is
Well,
to get him on a horse and
right.
ride for 6
Well, I
days and
mean,
nights.
my best feeling on that, like, is that elves can deal with a lot more, and she's maybe just, like, not spent enough time around humans to know that their bodies are
But if
not
she's like, he's
capable of
at death's
handling that.
door, that's why he needs elvish medicine. No one at
Mhm.
death's door emergency travels for many days and nights. Like that could kill you if you were fine. The horses should be dead.
I mean, maybe death's door has a long foyer.
Plus, I don't know why Arendir couldn't be like, I have these magic seeds and I used them on Bronwyn's wounds and she was dandy the next day. Why don't we put some of those on Halbrand's wound and he'll be good to go?
That is a good plan.
Also, Arendir previously said in the show when
Mhm,
Bronwyn asked him about it that
mhm.
elves don't have healers because they don't need them. And then Galadriel's like, he needs elvish medicine. And I really wish Arendir, who was in the room, had been like, since when? When did you guys decide to start healing? This is my first hearing of this.
I mean, it could be a class thing where they're like, "Oh, sorry, we just, like, don't use the elvish medicine on the soldiers because it's too expensive. You don't get
We use
healthcare."
it
No, I
only
don't
on the
know.
king of the Southlands. The Southlands, by the way, is a very rich kingdom of one village, which now burned down. So, yay,
Yeah.
king that
Yeah.
we never heard of
Right.
before.
Right.
And the people are like, strength to this nobody that Bronwyn says is our king because he had a keychain that looked kind of fancy.
Right. Oh, man.
That's why I'm
I
like,
mean,
I
this
just
is
can't
the thing
care
is that
about this.
yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing is it's like, I get why you're able to, like, make jokes about it because, like, yeah, like, if you think that hard about it, sure. But again,
Didn't
it's
need to
like,
think
as
that
I
hard about it.
no, but I mean, honestly, like, it's one of those things where, like, most of this is stuff that I'm like, I just was enjoying the moment and didn't pay much attention to it because,
Well, on all
you
the
know,
times when they like very obviously and completely shamelessly were trying to mirror a scene from Lord of the Rings, like from the films.
I like that.
But the thing is, like every single time they did it, well, two things happened. One, it was the same thing as the live action remakes, where I'm like, this just makes me miss the thing that's better. So
Uh-huh.
you've just reminded me of the thing that's better. That's a bad idea. But
Yeah.
two, it's every time they did it, it was just so obvious that they don't understand what it is that made the original scene work. And
Hmm.
so they've just like shallowly recreated the like imagery of it, but nothing about what made that moment a powerful moment. And so it just feels empty and hollow and like a cheap knockoff.
That's interesting. I guess I just didn't like, I saw it more as having nods to the original movies and to the books, but I didn't necessarily expect them to recreate specifically what those scenes were
Well, I would
doing.
rather they did. I'm just saying
Yeah.
it goes to show they don't understand what then generally makes a scene work because they don't understand what these scenes that they're imitating like what made them work. And like again, there's all these shots, right, of like
Mhm.
them riding across the lands. Like
Yeah.
there's so many shots of that, right? And the thing is, what those shots, because like yeah, Lord of the Rings has lots of those shots and they
Mhm.
work and people don't have a problem with it. But in Rings of Power, they don't work. People do have a problem with it. But they're the same, right? It's just a wide shot of people riding across land. But in Lord of the Rings, distance means something. And
Mhm.
when we're establishing how far they have to travel to get to this place and how long that's going to take and how huge this place is, and that's why it's going to take days and
Mhm.
weeks and months to get to where they're going to really give a sense of grounding of this world and how big it is. Here,
Mhm.
everyone's teleporting across everywhere. It takes no time whatsoever. But we're going to take runtime to show a wide angle shot of them riding. Do you feel how epic this is? No, I don't, because this is doing nothing to actually do anything for your world building, for your story, for your character building. This scene is useless.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think it probably is taking time, but I actually, and I mean, maybe this is controversial as well, but I sort of wish they had kept going with the map that they had in the first couple episodes. I sort of liked that in terms of giving a sense of where everybody actually is and how far apart things are from each other.
But
And
then
I
we'd
think
start to realize that it makes no sense that they got there in 2 seconds.
yeah, maybe, but I feel like other alternatively, they could have used the two in conjunction with each other to do what you're saying, which is show
Well,
distance and length of
we
time,
have
which I think would have been interesting.
Elrond and Durin casually strolling from Lindon to Khazad-dûm, which is a many days journey. But
Mhm.
they just, for an afternoon stroll, walk on over to Khazad-dûm. So like, but let's definitely have wide angle shots of people walking for some reason. To establish the distance, I guess, or the lack thereof. Like those elves are
Yeah.
going to carry that table all the way to Khazad-dûm, the one that Durin lied and he doesn't
Yeah.
actually have any reverence for. That amazing scene.
Yeah. I mean, they probably have, like, a wagon waiting off screen or something. But, no, I don't know. I mean, I think especially for the later episodes in the series, because they dragged out earlier ones and then
Oh
made
shit, we haven't made
cer
any Rings of Power yet, guys. We need to make some Rings of Power. It's the last episode. Quick, go to
Yeah.
Dollar Tree, get some ugly plastic rings. That'll do. We'll make them better in CGI. Yes. Okay, done. Rings of Power. Whew, nailed it.
Oh, man. No, but I think because there was so much happening in the last few episodes, we didn't get a strong sense of distance or time or, like, what was the time between when people landed and when they got places. Like, that was really unclear, and I think part of that is because of the pacing problems that they had with the show. So, again, I mean, like, for me and so that's the thing is it's like, I don't hate what they ended up with, but I do think it could have been better. But again, I think just with like doing a better job with pacing and how many plot lines you're choosing to focus on with so many different characters in different places.
I mean, the cultists did nothing for the show. Just cut that altogether. Completely
I
unnecessary.
don't know. One of them was really hot, Leanna. So
They were
I
just
think
red
that
herrings for the Sauron mystery.
I know, but I mean, they were cool.
And we had not Gandalf saying, "I'm good." That's a line in the show. It was in the script that they kept. They thought that was good. I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, he is learning from Harfoots. Like, how
Okay,
much
but in the next scene, he's speaking Shakespearean English to Nori. I'm so glad he learned in the last hour.
his memory is slowly returning.
Okay. That was ridiculous.
I thought it was cute. I like, yeah. I mean, I think that, like, ultimately, this is just kind of my feeling on the show as a whole. Is I generally liked it. I think that had pacing problems, but also they're first time showrunners, so like hopefully
So
they will learn.
why are they running $1 billion show?
Now that is a good question.
Who put these guys in
I mean,
charge?
I mean that is a good question.
I mean, I
Well,
did
I
say
think
somewhere else, I was like, I kind of can't blame them because I mean, like, if you hired me to do heart surgery, it's not my fault that you're going to die because I am not qualified to do heart surgery.
Yeah.
So they were not qualified for this job. So whoever hired them is really to blame.
I mean, apparently, I saw in an interview they really impressed them because they are fans of Tolkien and had specific plans
It's really
for what
hard
they
to find a
wanted to
fan
do.
of Tolkien. There's not many of those around.
I don't know. Maybe in Hollywood, there's not as many showrunners. But yeah, so apparently they impressed them with their plans for what they wanted to do with the show.
My
And
understanding
that's
is
how
they were
got it.
recommended by J.J. Abrams because they used to work in Bad Robot.
That's interesting.
So we have him to thank for this.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope that maybe they've learned some things in the first season and maybe by season 2.
Have you seen what they have to say about what their plans are for season 2?
No, I haven't.
They said that they envision season 2 to be like The Dark Knight, like The Sopranos, like what's it called? Breaking Bad. That Halbrand will be like Walter White. I'm not joking. I thought that was satire, but it is in fact not satire. That is what they said.
Could be interesting. We'll see.
Not with them running it.
Well, again, my hope is that they've learned a little bit and their pacing will be a little bit better in season 2. So we'll see. I mean, I'll still watch it and probably
I will too.
enjoy it. But
not that part.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. So this is going to be an interesting episode. I don't know if we're going to get comments on this or what people are going to say. And look, we're still friends. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, no one's killed anyone yet.
No, it's fine.
It's because I haven't taught you the Galadriel method of fighting with your feet, not with your hands. And what you do is you stab, twist, gut. I mean, none of them did that in the battle later, literally. Not even Galadriel used that method, but I'm glad she taught them those useful skills.
Very useful. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Wait, can we agree that the rings at the end are really ugly?
Yeah.
And cheap looking?
Yeah.
Where did the $1 billion go? Where?
Not there.
Where did they go?
The costumes.
They I mean, I was obviously joking, but it really felt like they were like, it's the last episode and we don't have any rings. Quick, go to Dollar Tree.
Yeah, I mean, the rings were not terribly impressive. So, no. Yeah.
They're only the titular element, the eponymous rings.
Right, rings of power. Yeah.
Also, how do we think that they're going to get the 9 rings for men and the 7 rings for dwarves, which they just, nope, that didn't happen. Doesn't matter.
We got to see in season 2. Those will come in season 2. How? It's the further rings of power.
So it's, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so sad that Isildur is 100% definitely dead.
Totally.
And we will never see him again.
No. Yeah, I don't know why they left that hanging. That was kind of irritating because, like, obviously
I was fully ready for them to rip off another Lord of the Rings scene and have Beric the horse come riding back with a thought-to-be-dead Isildur so we can all be like, oh, that's like Aragorn. We love it.
Maybe they're doing that in the opening of season 2.
Great.
Yeah, I don't think they should have saved that for later.
Or done it at all. It adds nothing to the story. No one thinks he's dead.
No, nobody thinks he's dead. Except for maybe people who watched this without.
And if they do think, do they care if he's dead? Because he's kind of a jerk. I don't know that I would care that he's dead.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how genuinely angry I was. Most of the show, I was like, this is dumb. But I felt actual anger when he gave Beric the horse a bite of his apple and then, like, carried on eating some of the rest of it himself. I was like, well, that's nice. You know, you don't have a lot of stuff on the ship. He was having an apple himself, but give one bite to the horse.
I know he gets kind of gross. I was like, why are you biting the apple after the horse ate from it? Gross. But
then he gets up on deck and most of the apple is still there and he throws it overboard into the ocean. You couldn't have just given it to the horse? The horse would have definitely eaten that apple. You are such a jerk. I hate you.
Yeah, I guess that was less what I was thinking. I was more thinking like, ew, why are you biting the apple after you fed some of it to the horse? Like, gross. Why would like doing that?
Why have him throw it into the ocean?
They probably have more apples.
On a ship where you've limited resources, you only have what you carried with you? I'm glad he's dead.
Maybe they have growing apple trees.
They would. Oh my god, I have to show you. There was a cartoon someone did of like the
ships.
Yeah, the ship of like how this massive underbelly that is under the ocean to be able to fit all of the supplies they supposedly have on there.
Yeah, I saw. That was funny. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's probably more to the fleet than, I don't know.
We heard them say you get 3 ships. There was originally 5, but 2 of them exploded. So you get 3 ships. That's it.
Maybe
Those
they
tiny little
have
ships.
Mary Poppins handbags to store supplies in.
It's that same supply closet where they get radios from the Southlands where they're like, hey, quick, as soon as you land, ride over. And it'll be the
Exactly.
exact same day, even though you guys were planning your trip and then got delayed and then you actually planned your trip. It coincides, you're landing
It's gonna work out.
exactly with the day that we decided to defend the village. Instead of the much more defensible fortress tower, we were like, nah, let's defend an open,
Village.
unenclosed village
Yeah.
instead. That's just good battle tactics.
I mean, to be fair, none of them were trained soldiers other than the, like, elf.
Arendir,
Well, Arendir, yeah, but
and he was the one that co-signed on this
yeah.
plan.
Yeah, well, I think he overestimated his abilities.
Clearly had no abilities if he thought that was a good plan. Oh boy.
I also really like Arendir and Bronwyn's relationship.
I've said this as someone, I wish I could remember the video because I've brought this up several times and it's not me that thought of this. I just really, really was like, yes. It was a video my brother showed me talking generally about Rings of Power, but this specific point about how it's like little things, you know, that you're like, if you just fix this, it would immediately be like 1,000% better. That like elves, typically speaking, not in this show, Tolkien-esque elves are kind of, you know, aloof and removed. They're kind of ageless, so they don't really like emote a ton because like your lifetime is like a blip for them, and so they speak in you know more poetic ways, and they're kind of, you know, they're elves. And in this show, all the elves act really human all the time with just very human emotions. They don't seem different from humans at all, except for the pointy ears, except Arendir. Arendir is kind of aloof and removed, and it would make so much more sense if it was just the other way around. Because Arendir is the one that's like into humans and wants to be around humans and is in love with a human. So if all the other elves were like austere and removed and aloof, but Arendir was extremely human and emotive because he likes the people, that would make everything just feel like it makes more sense. But you're like, all the elves, they're just like people. What is the difference? Except Arendir, but he's like super into people, but acts more like an elf than anybody.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can see that. I guess I just assumed that part of it was because in this, so many of the elves are a lot younger and have been at war in ways that they weren't in
They're
later
still like
films.
1,000 years old.
Well, no, like Galadriel's not.
Yes, she is.
Really? I thought she was like a few hundred years old or something.
That's still a lot, but you know, she's like 1,000 years old.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I had just sort of assumed that part of it was because they were not yet quite so old and they had been at war, they'd had more going on, and so they were dealing with the trauma of that.
Celebrimbor acts just like a human. He doesn't act like an elf.
No, that's true. Celebrimbor, yeah, I agree.
Heck, in that scene where Halbrand and Celebrimbor are talking, Halbrand seems more elvish than Celebrimbor.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Celebrimbor was not my favorite portrayal. Most of the actors I liked. That one
Also
I was like,
Gil-galad.
yeah. I saw there's a TikToker I follow who was joking that he looks like a human cosplaying as an elf. And I was like,
all do.
well, I don't know that I feel like that way about all of them, but I feel like especially for like the Elven King, that was definitely my feeling. I liked Arondir though. I thought he was a good elf.
I guess I should say I don't have any problems with any of the actors themselves. Like for people who are saying that the acting is what's terrible in this show, I mean, you obviously disagree that the show is terrible, but for me, I'm like, what actor could make this script good? Like, I don't blame them. Like, they were handed these lines to say, and they were like, you want me to say what? That's dumb. But okay, you're paying me to say that, so I will say that, and I will try to make it sound legit. So like, you can't, I don't, for people, maybe I haven't really seen them in anything else, so maybe they are terrible actors. I can't confirm that they're not terrible actors, but I don't know that they are based on this. Because like, what did you want them to do? This is the script.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly liked the actors. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, we've now been talking about this for like an hour. So we should probably wrap it up. But I mean, I think it's an interesting show. I have seen when I've mentioned in live shows that I enjoyed it, I get a lot of comments from people who are not creators being like, yeah, I liked it too. Thanks for saying that. No one else is saying it. So I do think there's a lot of like casual watchers of the show who are enjoying it. And so, for those of you who are listening, or if that's you, I hope that I help you feel heard and seen.
And the people that hate it don't necessarily hate you.
Yeah.
Because look at us.
Yeah.
I don't hate Bethany.
No, and I don't hate Leanna. It's okay. Also, it's not like it's a cherished show for me, though. You know what I mean?
We might have problems if you were like, this is the greatest show that I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Nothing will ever match it. I'd be
Nothing will ever match
been,
it. It is my
it's
favorite
been good,
thing
Bethany, but
that
I think
I've
we're
ever
done.
seen. Yeah, no, that would be more of a problem because that's not how I feel. Like I liked it pretty well. I have it could have been better in some ways, but I mostly liked it.
My mom only watched the season finale. She'd seen like my videos on the rest of it, but she hadn't seen any of the episodes herself. So she watched the season finale and she was like, that was so boring. I don't understand how you watched 8 episodes of that. That was so boring. Yeah, wow.
Oh my gosh. Ah, that's so funny. Well, there you go, everybody. We're gonna do On My Radar. Man, this is gonna be a long episode. Also, I have way more books for this than I normally do. So, On My Radar is where we will share recent or upcoming book releases in sci-fi, fantasy, and romance. Leanna, I don't know if you have any today. But the books I've got for today's episode will be released between November 1st and November 14th, 2022. But first, if you enjoy the podcast, we'd appreciate if you rate and review us, follow us over on YouTube, especially for the forthcoming live show for Wisdom of Crowds, which should be fun. And if you're interested in getting early access to episodes and exclusive bonus content with every episode, consider supporting us on Patreon. And in fact, this week's bonus content should be fun. It was what we were thinking of possibly doing for the episode, but instead we're doing bonus content. Yes, that's right. We are going to be talking about Over the Garden Wall. It is seasonally appropriate. So tune in, join us on Patreon if you want to hear about it. And huge thanks to all of our supporting patrons. You make what we do possible. So books, I'm going to try to quickly run through these because everything is apparently coming out in the first couple weeks of November. So yeah. November 1st, we're getting Sea Sparrow by Kristen Kishore. This is the final book in the Graceling series that she has returned to over many years. I'm doing a read along for it and loving them. We're also getting The World We Make by N.K. Jemisin, who is a queen, and I love everything that she writes. And I'm sure this is going to be fantastic with eldritch horrors. So it should be fun. Also, Ocean's Echo by Everina Maxwell. This is a companion to Winter's Orbit, which was one of my favorite books last year. It's a queer sci-fi romance, and this is set in the same world following different characters. Should be a good time. We're also getting A Restless Truth by Freya Marsk, which I am currently reading. This one is a sapphic historical fantasy romance that is set in the same world as The Marvelous Light, which came out last year. And so far, it's fun. It's like 2 women on shipboard with a closed circle murder mystery and magic and a slow burn romance happening. You thought I was done. I have more. There's a lot. There's so many. The Luminaries by Susan Dennard. It is the first book that she's written since The Witchlands. I mean, The Witchlands is not over. There will be another book coming out with that, but this is the start of a new series that looks intriguing. Excited to read that. We're also getting Moira's Pen by Megan Whalen Turner. So for anybody who was a fan of the Queen's Thief series, which I really loved, this is kind of cool. It's a collection of short stories set in the world of the Queen's Thief, and it looks really pretty. And I pre-ordered a special edition from Owl Crate because I was like, oh yes, I need that because I love the series. And then November 8th, The Stars Undying by Emery Robin looks really interesting. This is I think, debut space opera drawing on the life of Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. So that should be interesting. I've been hearing some good things about it. And then we've got a novella, Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk. This one I did read. It's fun. It is fantasy noir murder mystery with lesbians. It's good. I liked it. It was fun. It's short. Yeah, so I think I'll stop there. It's like, there are more I could talk about. Like, everything is apparently coming out the first couple weeks of November, but that will give you some great places to start for some books. This is all stuff that I am either reading or going to read. So yeah. That said, the next episode, I will be back with Izzy, and we have something very exciting for you. We have the chance to sit down and talk to Olivia Dade, author of Spoiler Alert and some other fantastic romances. She's one of my favorite contemporary romance authors, and she was just incredible to talk to. So if you are a romance reader, I know we sometimes don't get all the crossover on our episodes depending on what we're talking about, but I'm really excited for that. So that will be coming in 2 weeks, and this has been Chapter 3 Podcast. We're your hosts, Bethany and Liene. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Chapter 3 Podcast, and you can find us on our individual YouTube channels. The next episode will be available in 2 weeks, and this episode's bonus content will be available to patrons in the next few days. Thanks for listening.